Today on Ostentatious, we're going to talk about stubborn leaf springs and the chaos that might ensue in trying to get those out. Welcome back to Ostentatious. My name's Jack, and this is my 1987 Chevy S10 Blazer that I'm working on for Hot Rod Power Tour 2023. Today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the suspension. I finally got everything off, and I ran into a problem that a lot of other people run into, and I found a little bit of a unique solution. You all may have already caught the thumbnail, but in this process, I had to get a little bit violent with the leaf spring, and that's okay because I'm not using it. So I want to talk to you guys about a leaf spring removal method that if you're not going to be reusing your leaf springs, this might be a viable solution for you. As y'all saw in the thumbnail, I have cut the end off of this leaf spring. Now this is the driver's side leaf spring. That's the back. This is the front. And let me show you all what the problem was. Before we show you the solution, let me give you all a little bit of a breakdown how a leaf spring is set up. All right, first of all, let's start at the center of the leaf spring. Now, you see that there's several layers there. These are actually spring packs. Okay, these extra leaves in the middle allow it to carry extra load. Now, some of you may have taken these apart before down to a mono leaf. Definitely, if you ever do that, leave the overload on the bottom. Now, these can be loaded onto the top or the bottom of the rear end, depending on the model of truck you have. And you can also relocate from the top to the bottom. Now, either way you do that, you're still going to have the mount on the end. Now, as you can see, the end mount has several layers. You have the actual leaf spring itself, which, if you notice, doesn't go all the way around. It comes around here and it actually stops. That's actually in the manufacturing process. In the middle of that, there's a bushing, and beyond that bushing, there is going to be a metal insert that the bolt actually runs through. Now, the problem with removing leaf springs is that the lubrication that is inside of those cylinders actually dries out over time, and dirt and whatever else from the road gets in there, and the bolts tend to seize up. When the bolts seize up, a lot of the time our first thought is to get some kind of penetrator, WD-40, PB blaster, whatever we can get our hands on, and let it soak in that. Well, I did that. It didn't work, okay? So that's something that we all probably commonly have laying around, some kind of penetrant wool. So after soaking in penetrant wool, 3 out of the 4 bolts came out. The driver's side one was more stubborn on the back than the passenger side. However, what I did is I left the nut on, and yes, I know this is still going to mess the threads up a little bit, and I'm replacing these bolts anyway. But I just put a chisel on the end of it and smacked the chisel until it started moving. Once it started moving, I got a screwdriver that was designed to hammer on and just pushed it the rest of the way through. That way the screwdriver could fit through the bolt hole and just back till it came out. The front mount was a completely different story, and you can kind of tell that because there's some grinder marks on this little piece of 4x4 here. Well, let's go ahead and talk about that. So there's many different ways that they talk about removing stubborn bolts on the internet on these leaf springs. Hey, I've seen people put clamps on them. I've seen people use torches. By the way, if you don't do that, don't try to use those little Coleman propane things. I've tried it. It doesn't work, okay? A full-blown acetylene torch. That's what we're talking about. Either heat it up or cut the bolt end off on both ends, let it fall out, okay? But a lot of us don't have access to that. I don't have access to that. But what most of us do have access to is a grinder and a strap. So here's my recommendation. First of all, you want to start at one end of the leaf spring. Now, if both ends are being stubborn, pick an end, okay? Pick your battle. My best advice, if both ends are stuck, pick the end that you have the least access to work in to do this. Second of all, cut your leaf spring right by the perch, okay? Just kind of a little bit out from it, just enough to where you can get a hold of it. Back here, it's a little bit different story. You still got a little lip here you can grab a hold of, or you can grab it from the back. You might want to cut it to where it'll fold up to here. You can take a hammer and beat it around. It's going to be a little bit stubborn, but you can move it around. But strap the end of the leaf spring up and cut the end of the leaf spring off. That way it doesn't fall on you when you cut it. Then you'll want to do the same thing on the other end. Strap it up, cut it. That way it doesn't fall down into the grinder or whatever and cut your hand off. We don't want that. Safety first. Or third or whatever, just as long as you're safe. Now here's where things get interesting. All right, once you have the leaf spring cut out of the way, you can set it to the side. All right, there's nothing that's gonna fall on you and kill you at that point, so we don't have to worry about it. But we're gonna talk about this area through here, okay? Y'all remember I was talking about earlier, we have a leaf spring that doesn't wrap all the way around, right? They bend it to where there's a little bit left. So we're gonna manipulate that, okay? That bolt and that cylinder in the center is only so big. So if we can get part of that leaf spring out, then we can go ahead and remove everything hiding that cylinder so we can get to it to remove it. So go along the back edge here, opposite of that opening, and find somewhere to grind through. Now, two things. This is not going to be an exact process. You're going to have to find out where you're going to have access to cut through. Okay, that's number one. And number two, you don't want the leaf spring flopping around. Well, what's left of the leaf spring flopping around when you do this? So here's how I solved that. What I did is I took advantage of the way the mount is used. I actually took what I had left of the leaf spring and folded it up to here and clamped it in with a vice grip. And yes, it was a vice grip. It was an Irwin brand. Then what I did is I was able to come in the center here. The best way I found to do this is just center your grinder here and just grind your way straight in carefully. That way you avoid as much contact with these sides as possible. All right, we don't want to kind of cut through these holes and leave it weak. Otherwise, you're going to be coming up here and grinding these 4 rivets out and putting a new leaf spring perch on. But once you get so far, you can start beating it with a hammer. As long as it's still hot, you can beat it with a hammer and it will completely separate. That's what I did. Just get as close as you can without touching these, and you can beat the rest of it off. If you have to, hit it in there with some kind of chisel. Just make sure you do it while it's still hot. These are going to be a throwback to what I said a while ago. These are the pieces you're going to go inside and see, and here's how you deal with it from here. This is the leaf spring where I beat it in half, okay? And yes, I beat it a little bit more since then. I just, you know, a victory sledgehammer. So inside that sleeve, here's that rubber bushing we were talking about, and inside that doesn't look normal. Let's find out why. So normally this sleeve would be sitting in here with the bolt inside of it, okay? And it would go all the way across here. Now, once it's here, the bolt and this tend to generally turn. I would recommend going on the back side and just forcing it around a few times with a breaker bar, 5 or 6 rotations to where you know for sure the bolt is turning against on the frame. We don't want it to get stuck on the frame. We want it to only be stuck on this. Once we're only stuck on this, here's what we can do. Come up in here with the vice grip where you can pin it in place, and It's kind of like scissors. You clamp it onto the cylinder. You cut as much of the cylinder as you can clear with your grinder. You take your vice grips off, rotate it a little bit, clamp them again, do it again, until you've got as far into it as you can. Now, some vehicles you might be able to get all the way through the bolt, but I knew that I was far enough into the bolt where I could take the sledgehammer while it was hot again, and just kept hitting the bolt in the cylinder until the bolt broke in half. And at that point, it became really easy. Apparently the rust that was holding it was mainly on the outside. Now you may have to do this on the inside, and that's probably a good idea to come as close as you can to the inside. At that point, I was able to stick my screwdriver through here and here, whack the bolt out, and that was it. So there we have it, everybody. The leaf spring removal method that nobody's talking about on the internet, at least that I've seen. If y'all see anything on YouTube or see something, drop it down in the comments there. Let me know. Y'all, thank you for watching Ostentatious. My name is Jack. Like, comment, subscribe. Share this with others. We appreciate you. Have a great week.